Oh yeah, that's good. Mm, that's perfect. I started making Irish coffee for myself based on a recipe that I learned when I was visiting Ireland. So if you want to know how to make the best cup of Irish coffee, this is the video to watch. Sláinte and merry meet. I want to thank you for joining us for this video. If you were with us during our first video, thank you and welcome back. My name is Myra, and this is Kitchen Witchery. My goal with Kitchen Witchery is to bring more wisdom, education, and inspiration to the community to help them in their spiritual path. So if you'd like to get ideas on how to cook up more magic, then hit like and subscribe. And with that being said, let's get brewing. There are a lot of things that you might do during the month of March that you're familiar with, like wear green, for luck. And you may also be looking for four-leaf clovers. These are things that we used to do when we were kids, and they are all part of Celtic and Irish folklore. So as we go into March, I wanted to work with some of the magic that we can bring into our kitchen, things like luck drawing and success magic, and work that into consumables or foods that we can bring to our family. So today we're going to be making luck drawing Irish coffee, which is taking the mundane Irish coffee, however the best recipe out there, and turning it into something magical. And then we're also going to make success Swedish meatballs. Now you might be thinking, what do Swedish meatballs have anything to do with Celtic tradition? It doesn't. Just like me, I want to bring in eclectic elements to the practice and to these videos. So we're going to mash it up a little bit with some different types of dishes that normally might not be found together. Irish coffee was developed in 1943 by an Irish chef whose name was Joe Sheridan. He worked at an air base near Limerick. Foran's Port was a common air base that was known for bringing in VIPs and celebrities and politicians. And the weather was often bad there, and so it forced a lot of the travelers to have to stay the night or to stay over in the airport. Well, there was one particular winter storm that had moved in, and it caused the flight to be rerouted or returned mid-trip or mid-travel. And Chef Sheridan felt really bad. He felt empathy for the travelers, that they were basically abandoned at the airbase. And so he whipped up this coffee recipe to serve to all of the passengers. There was an American who was on that flight who had asked Chef Sheridan if this was Brazilian coffee. And his response was, no, this is Irish coffee. And that's how Irish coffee got its name. Now, after the war, Irish coffee was brought back to the United States as those authors and celebrities were traveling back to America. But they could never seem to get it right in America. They could never seem to get the cream to float on the top of the coffee, or the taste of the Irish coffee to be the same as what they had experienced. So there was one particular bartender who actually had flown back to Ireland to learn from Joe Sheridan directly about how to make the best cup of Irish coffee. Now, if you ever travel in Ireland and you get a chance to have Irish coffee, they're very proud of the recipe, and they will definitely show you how to make Irish coffee. The key, or the trick, is in the technique. So Chef Sheridan came up with a fun way of trying to remember the recipe for Irish coffee. And the witch in me can appreciate the subtle spellcraft of this rhyme. Cream rich as an Irish brogue, coffee strong as a friendly hand, sugar sweet as the tongue of a rogue, whiskey smooth as the wit of the land. Right? I'm like, oh my gosh, if that isn't, coffee magic, I don't know what is. Now we're going to stir up some magic by adding elements like nutmeg for luck and to luck draw. And then we're also going to top it with cacao or cocoa, which brings in more happiness with the recipe. We're also going to use a stick of cinnamon. It's not just for decor, but it also helps to draw in elements of prosperity and abundance. So with that, let's brew up some coffee. Before I get started with any magical working in the kitchen, I always want to make sure that I start by setting intention, and that is why I light my candles. The white candle is for spirit, for ancestors and guides, and I use it with a glass of water because spirit travels through the plane of empathy and emotions that is ruled by water. So if you ever see a glass of water next to a white candle, it's because spirit's been invoked in that space for guidance and for intuition. I also light a black candle for protection because whatever we're working on, we want to make sure that it's not interfered with or that it becomes eroded or degraded in some sense. So I'm going to go ahead and light my 2 candles to set the intention for the space. I light this candle to invoke spirit and ancestor to our space to guide us in our magical workings. So mote it be. I light this candle as protection so that our magic may be contained and protected in this space. So mote it be. Let's talk about the ingredients that you're going to need for this recipe. We are going to have a link in the description below to the pages that I'm using for my grimoire that have the recipe for this Irish coffee. To start with, you're going to need a very dark brew coffee. Now, if you don't have something that would be considered as a dark brew, you can always just make it stronger by adding some additional coffee to your normal coffee preparation. You're also going to need brown sugar, Irish whiskey, nutmeg, cinnamon sticks, whipping cream, vanilla extract, sugar, and if you want to decorate the top of it with some powdered cacao or potentially cacao nibs for aesthetics, that's additional add-on as well. Let's get started with part of the technique of making a good cup of Irish coffee. First and foremost, we're going to start with boiled water. Boiled water is poured into the glass. We're going to let the hot water sit in the mug for a little while. That's going to help make the glass warm. And the reason why we do that is because it melts the brown sugar. We're also going to brew up our coffee. I am using a new product that's in the store called Woke Witch Coffee. Every coffee has some type of an intentional theme to it. This happens to be prosperity. So I thought it was appropriate for this Irish coffee. So it has undertones of kind of nuttiness, some cinnamon to it, but it's not overpowering or anything. It's very light. Now, normally, for a normal cup of coffee, I would probably just use maybe 4 heaping tablespoons of coffee. But since we want it to be a little bit stronger, and I know that this coffee runs a little bit more medium roast, we're going to add a total of 6 heaping tablespoons to our press. We already have our water boiled. We're going to go ahead and seep that. Let that sit before I press it down. So now that the glasses have been warmed up, I'm going to discard the hot water and get started with adding the brown sugar to the cup so that it can start melting. Now, there's no real right or wrong answer about how much you want to put in here. I guess it kind of just depends on how sweet you like your coffee. Keep in mind, we're going to be putting some whipped cream on the top, so I would recommend possibly not going overboard with the brown sugar. But brown sugar is, I think, perhaps as a recipe element, one of the key factors of giving Irish coffee that caramel undertone that is very subtle when you're tasting it. So I'm putting about maybe 1.5 brown sugar in the bottom of the cup. Now, on top of that, I'm going to go ahead and add my Irish whiskey. I tried out a couple of different Irish whiskeys that are out there. I found this really neat Jameson cold brew. It's amazing, but I decided not to use it in this recipe. Instead, I will probably use this bottle on my personal altar as a offering to my gods and my deities in the shop. If you've ever been in the store and you've seen little bottles of alcohol around the top of bookshelves, or maybe there are little cups that have fluid in them, sometimes it's water to invoke spirit. Other times it's alcohol or the spirits and the guides that we call into the shop to provide ongoing guidance and protection in our spiritual space. So anytime you see those on altars, it's not because there's been a big drinking party or anything. So we're going to go ahead and pour out a little bit of our Tullamore Dew as the Irish whiskey that we're going to use for an offering. And I'm just going to leave that there during the process of my cooking, and we'll collect it up a little bit later. Now I'm going to add the Irish whiskey to the bottom of the cup. Depending on how strong you want your whiskey, you can do a double, you can do a single. My production crew would love a double. I'm also using a small magical looking kind of spoon. I have certain tools in my kitchen that I dedicate to my magical workings. So you might have like your mundane spoon, or you might have your everyday utensils. But then I have utensils that I use for anything that I'm working with magically that I'm trying to infuse, because it's how I'm connecting with my my food or with my items here. You may have gotten this in a Curiously Curated box last month, and if you didn't know what to do with it, now you know what to do with it and how to use it. I'm going to stir up the whiskey and the brown sugar. So nutmeg is one of the items that was put in the Magical Pantry for the month of March, because the Magical Pantry box this month is focusing on luck. Nutmeg is a fire energy herb that is used in a lot of prosperity work and a lot of prosperity spells to help draw in luck and good favor. Now, luck can come in a lot of different forms. You know, part of luck could be being in the right place at the right time to meet the right person to help connect you. So being lucky doesn't necessarily mean winning the lottery or, you know, getting some type of a prize. It could be how you end up positioning yourself throughout the day to be in the right place, the right circumstances. So that's the intention that we're using with nutmeg. Only fill the glass part way. You want to top it all off with whipped cream. And the cinnamon's more than a garnish. Cinnamon helps to infuse with prosperity and also abundance. So now I'm going to go ahead and work on the whipped cream. If you're not going to use a already pre-made whipped cream, then I do recommend that you whip the cream prior to starting your coffee so that it's ready to go when your coffee's ready to go. One of the aspects about Irish coffee is the cream that you put on the top of it. You're using just regular coffee cream, it will slide into the coffee and just mix with the coffee, and it doesn't leave that nice frothy top on the top of coffee. That is very typical with Irish coffee. Now there's supposedly a trick. I did try it out this morning with varying levels of success, where apparently if you pour cream over the backside of a spoon, it can kind of help it to settle on the top of that. But honestly, if you're going to go through the effort, you might as well just do it right and make whipped cream. And then I mentioned earlier you could top it with cacao powder for aesthetic and for adding happiness. And if you didn't have cacao, you could always top it off again with a little bit more nutmeg. That makes it really pretty aesthetic as well. And with that, the coffee is ready. Now the key to Irish coffee is it's supposed to be enjoyed with a friend. So I salute this glass to you as a friend. Sláinte. Sláinte. Didn't say that right. Sláinte. Say that right. Sláinte. 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 Sláinte and merry meet. Just fell right on my head again. With that, let's get to brewing. It's cooking up some magic. Oh, that was what it is. Sláinte. 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 But the name of the airbase where this was served the first time is Foynes port. At least I hope I'm saying it right. I looked it up, you know, and Foynes. Add the Irish whiskey. Why do I keep saying rum? It's whiskey, not rum. Whiskey is so smooth too in an Irish cup. I bought 4 bottles of Irish whiskey, Teeling, Jameson, something else. The Teeling is so strong. Oh my gosh, it is like burn your chest. But that's the reason why you want it, is because it warms you up in Ireland because it's cold in Ireland. The Jameson coffee was just a little bit too much, you know, so it's a little bit too much coffee in the coffee. Slancha. Let's do it again. I hope the coffee doesn't get melted.